Hi, I'm Kevin Drinkall.
Hi, and I'm Michel Nicolai, and we welcome you to Sizon Networks podcast.
We've been in the network industry for over 15 years, and in these podcasts we want to try and untangle the world of networking, debunk some of those myths, explain some real-world examples along the way, to help you make better choices about selecting the right tech, product, and even help you guys build faster, more reliable, scalable networks, or just to keep your kids happy at home. Well, welcome back to another podcast, and today it starts with a question. Should we be saying goodbye to Wi-Fi 5? That's the question, right?
That's the question on the table. Is it 5 or... Yeah, it's not the latest technology. We at least is 7. So maybe the question is, should we also leave 6? I don't know. Let's put it on the table. Let's discuss about this.
Okay, well, let's have our resident Wi-Fi expert, and we brought Hugh back.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome back, Hugh.
It's my favourite topic, right?
Wi-Fi, of course,
Wi-Fi, yeah.
Of course.
We've talked about Wi-Fi 7 in quite a lot of detail in our previous podcast. We've done a few, actually. And one we talked about debunking Wi-Fi 7, and about what it brings, etc. So here is not the topic. I don't think we need to go into too much depth about the technology in terms of all of the real detail. And I think if you're really interested in that, you should go and listen to that podcast. But why move to Wi-Fi 7 in the first place? And what sort of advantages do we need to look at? And what's the overview of that?
With any of this latest technology, we're always talking about speed, right? That's really fundamentally what we're trying to get at here. Faster connectivity. And again, with Wi-Fi 7, we've broken all of those barriers of 10 gig, etc. in that performance. So that's really...
Yeah, that's the first one. Yeah, for sure. I mean,
and maybe reliability.
Yeah, of course. With MLO functionality, again, we have the reliability. We can use multiple frequencies at the same time.
It's a benefit and a half, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's more than a benefit. It's 2 benefits at least.
Yeah, and the experience, that is for everyone key, yeah? It's not always how fast it is. It should be there when you need it, yeah? And you get the delivery that you expect. That is the thing, yeah? And it's not always about speed. Of course, it is important, yeah? Don't get me wrong, because more and more people are using it. But the new technology helps there a lot.
Yeah, and when let's go right back to the question: should we be saying goodbye to Wi-Fi 5? And ultimately, there are lots of installations out there. There are probably hundreds of thousands of installations that are still utilizing the Wi-Fi 5 technology, and they work.
Yeah, but I mean, the question is what's the benefit of moving to, say, Wi-Fi 7 now, right, over that technology? Should they do that? I mean, that's what we should discuss. I think, what's the benefits of moving to Wi-Fi 7, and what are the pitfalls that you might come across as well when you do that?
Yeah, so we looked at it. Speed is one of them. The other great feature that Wi-Fi 6E and 7 bring is that utilization of the 6 gigahertz space.
When we talk about Wi-Fi 7 is the frequency, but actually Wi-Fi 7 brings us its own feature set or functionality that's outside of that. So 6E gives us the 6 gigahertz. He brought that into the mix, and that gave us 2 times more bandwidth to go at.
No DFS, so that gives you more reliability.
Yeah, and obviously much cleaner. Right now it's cleaner anyway.
And going back to that thing of differentiating from the frequency, it is about the speed, it is about the resilience, it is about utilizing the frequencies. All of this means that Wi-Fi 7 has those advantages.
Yeah, so you have things like multi-link operation, right, which is really key to utilizing those multiple channels. And one of the things that I think a lot of people forget about in Wi-Fi 7 is that WPA3 is a requirement.
Yeah, and again, we have to look at that and understand that WPA3 is a encryption, and not all devices support it right today. As we move forward, it will become more prevalent, but we also are backwards compatible. And that's the great thing in Wi-Fi, right? We can always support those older devices all the time. And we can go right back to the Bs and Gs of the world.
But talking about, the older tech, connecting, you and I, we're always talking about, should we really be letting those devices connect, right? So, because there's always that debate about the performance impact, whether it's Wi-Fi 6 or Wi-Fi 7 or Wi-Fi 5, actually, to be fair, But those older generation devices, when they do connect, they can impede the performance, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there is actually, I'm going to divert the conversation slightly. There's a great feature on Nebula that talks about the compatibility of those devices. So again, within Nebula, you can turn that feature on and you can see what compatibility and what standard your devices can actually support. Because ultimately, the older tech that connects, those Bs and Gs, are performance limited. You know, that their speeds were like 11 meg and 54 meg. You know, that's what they can communicate at. And therefore, they slow the whole environment down.
Yeah, it's like 12 years old technology, right? We discussed
it's even more. You know, you go right back to the Bs and Gs, yeah, way back in 20 years. That's
right. We talked about that in another podcast when we went over all of the history, right? Remember?
Yeah, Wi-Fi 5, you know, that's 14 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So what advantage or disadvantages do we have with Wi-Fi 7 today? What's the difference, right? What can we say is in Wi-Fi 7 is a massive impact on the performance, or much better, that customers should be looking out for? And what things do you think will be a pitfall? Do you think WPA3 will be an issue?
That's a really challenging question there, actually, Kevin, in the fact of when we look at those older devices, we look at where we are today and we're in that transition, we're in that window. And what we are finding, though, is there are more and more devices connecting to our wireless networks of all different ilks, okay? From IoTs right to your latest iPhones and your Macs and all of the high-end wireless devices. And of course, the high-end support the WPA3 standards. But we've still got to support that low-end IoT devices that are coming in, that cheapest chips, etc., you know, and we have to support those. They don't, at this moment in time, support it. But we want to be progressing our networks towards more devices, and ultimately the speed of Wi-Fi 7 allows us to handle those far more clients than we've ever supported before.
So Wi-Fi 7 really then, when you talk, it's not just speed, is it? It's also about capacity, right?
Absolutely.
We are holding weight. I mean, you know, obviously when we look at our own access points, our flagship, it has 10 gig on the back, right? Because we are not only exceeding the barrier of, well, way past 5 gig, right? Because the actual AP supports 22 gigabits per second, but also the capacity in per client, you know, speeds, etc., need to be delivered as well, right? So I think that's also a key thing to consider, is if you need the capacity, and many people don't even realize how many devices they've got connected, right? Like you talked about IoT, there's, you know, probably my own home has 20, 30 devices, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Plus, and those numbers just keep growing. You know, we're never going to be reducing this number. More and more devices and more customers are going Wi-Fi first. That means that, you know, the cable to the desk, the cable to the phone is disappearing.
That's right. So you need to pay attention, I guess, when you're doing things like this about what's going to impact the performance. If you're going, wireless first approach, then you definitely need to consider how you're going to deliver that with latest tech, right?
Absolutely. And, you know, if that is a strategy that your company or you're going for yourself, then ultimately that, you know, utilizing the latest wireless technology like Wi-Fi 7 access points is key.
On a side note, because you mentioned about IoT, and it's not directly involved with the question that we're discussing, which is, should we say goodbye to Wi-Fi 5 or even Wi-Fi 6? But on IoT, actually securing and onboarding, you know, IoT devices, we actually have a function for that as well, right? I think it's worth mentioning that in Nebula, we also have a function to help securely onboard IoT devices as well. So I know it's not directly related, but I think it's an important, also another topic perhaps that we should really discuss as well at some point. But some customers are going to talk about, you know, it's Wi-Fi 7 is too expensive, or it's not, you know, it's a more costly approach, or I don't think that's the case, right?
No, absolutely not. It's Wi-Fi 7 has seen that kind of change in the fact that normally with latest technology, there's a price jump, right? I want the latest iPhone. It's actually, we've seen it with the latest iPhone, actually, in the fact that the prices come down slightly. That's the same in Wi-Fi, right? We've actually been able to sell and create Wi-Fi 7 access points at a very, very similar price point to Wi-Fi 6.
So yeah, we talked about specific items in Wi-Fi 7, yeah, but let's talk about our own products, yeah, because what do our own products do in this segment? What kind of features do we offer
I mean, obviously, when we talk about flagship technology, we have a smart antenna technology, which we covered quite a lot in the past. So we're not going to go into detail about it, right? But obviously, that's a great advantage.
Yeah, maybe in a nutshell.
I mean, obviously, it allows the access point to adapt to its environment, deliver. Actually, the latest Wi-Fi 7 access point delivers over 4,000 different antenna patterns per radio to achieve the best results in any environment, adapting to environmental changes that have interference, right? If you need an access point that's going to be high capacity, high density, lots of connected devices, and you have challenging environments where you can't control radio around you or interference, this is by far the best technology.
And especially because it is Wi-Fi version independent. Yeah, it doesn't matter if you have the latest tech on your client. This function always works. So even with a very old BG device, you can leverage from smart antenna, and that is a strong benefit.
Would give you the advantage of the performance for sure. So where we talked about before, where Hugh and I were discussing briefly there about Wi-Fi 5 and 6 devices, connecting and even the B&Gs before, where they're dragging down the performance. Smart antenna can improve it. It doesn't remove it, but it will improve it. So
it, of course, just gives the quality of experience for that user. And that's one of the things that Wi-Fi 7 really does do. Does it work? Yes. Does it work well? And is the user experience? That is Wi-Fi 7.
So when we talk about coverage, I mean, Wi-Fi 7, does it struggle with coverage? Worse, better?
So coverage is coverage, right? Because, again, we are fixed to power standards. So, again, what we've got to consider is, when did Wi-Fi 5 devices come out? They came out, 14 years ago, around this time frame. The antenna designs, the antenna understanding has changed in that period of time. And now we do have the latest technologies. We do have the smart antennas. We do have the dual optimized platforms as well, remember. So again, the antenna isn't just a piece of cable or a bit of metal, etc. These are properly designed. And when we talk about, from Zeisel's perspective, Wi-Fi first, right? This is key to us. And it is all about that signal and that antenna design. And that is one of the biggest fundamentals why we should.
Like you mentioned, all the power restrictions are the same for every vendor, right? It's a legal requirement. But how you design the antenna can be the difference of 2 or 3 dBm in the air, right? And that is a massive, massive improvement. It could mean the modulation difference between connecting at 300 or 800 megabits per second, for example, or even faster when you're looking at the higher end. Whilst Wi-Fi 7 is much more modular as well, and it has better QAM, right? It allows it to modulate much better in this same space, right?
Yeah, to get those higher QAM levels and to achieve the Wi-Fi 7 standards and the speeds, that signal has to be there, that strength of signal.
So, I mean, in reality, when we add Wi-Fi 7 technology with our advancement in antenna technology, it's about quality of service, delivery, and then in turn that gives you speed and density, right?
Yeah, so when you start adding it all together, absolutely, this is a reason, to move to Wi-Fi 7, and certainly to say goodbye to Wi-Fi 5, right?
Absolutely.
But let's take a jump back. We talk about coverage. What should we do around, if I've got old Wi-Fi 5 access points and I want to move to Wi-Fi 7, what do I have to do?
Yeah, I think you can go 2 ways. Yeah, you can go and say, okay, let's check what I have today on Wi-Fi 5. Maybe you check on, let's say, the number of antennas that you are now using in your AP, and make sure that your replacement Wi-Fi 7 device has similar number of antennas to make sure that the coverage is more or less the same. So then you probably can stick with your connection. But it could also be an opportunity to revise your network and let the new technology, really play an effective role in your distribution. And maybe you can leave out APs and reduce the number and gain the same coverage. So there is no answer yes or no, but there are different ways to do it. But there's a lot of things you can do in this way.
I mean, I think if you've got a 2x2 today, then you can replace it with a 2x2 and have exactly the same coverage, if not better, to be honest with you.
It will be better coverage.
Yeah, because of the antenna design. And if you've got 3x3, it doesn't exist in Wi-Fi 7, so you'd have to go to 4x4.
Yeah.
So they are basically the two options. So it's actually much easier base-wise, right? There's one or the other option. The other thing to consider is whether you want to go for a dual-band radio or a triple-band radio. And if you want to leverage Wi-Fi 7, then really triple band is the best option to go. If you're looking for a cost-effective approach to rip out and replace the product, then you could go with dual band and have that option to use 6 gigahertz. Again, 6 gigahertz, are we going to lose coverage?
Well, let's think about that in 6 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. In Europe, we only get the bottom half of the 6 gigahertz range, right? We shouldn't really complain too much about that because actually that 6 gigahertz gives us double what we've already got, right? So it absolutely gives us that extra bandwidth.
And more reliable.
Because there's no interference, right? So again...
At the minute.
But that's the advantage. So we have it,
Absolutely. At the bottom range, we probably lose about 10%. If we start looking at the top of the range, which is heading towards a 7 gigahertz, so now we've stopped at 5 to 7 gigahertz difference, the antenna patterns will be different and we will have greater losses. So hopefully, fingers crossed, touch all the wood, cross all the fingers, etc., we do get the upper band of 6 gig. And from there, yes, you will have to go out and survey your environment again because the 6 gigahertz at the top range will act differently to the bottom range.
But still, if you're doing a basic rip out and replacement today, like you're just doing an direct upgrade path, you can still utilize 6 gigahertz roughly around what we have today in Europe is about the same, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, most people have probably gone out and put too many access points in and the coverage are big overlaps, etc., because we all wanted roaming and we all wanted this extra coverage and extra power extra out there. So actually, unless you've gone out there and you've really scrimped and looked at your designs to efficiencies and you've really driven that efficiency in for that overlap, then you will need to go out and reevaluate. If you haven't, then rip and replace is great.
And remember, it's not only we are tweaking on the AP side, but also all the vendors with the clients, they improve as well, their chipset that they're using today is much more efficient as, let's say, 5 years ago. So also on that part, there's a huge development. So, and that helps us also a lot in to have a good connectivity.
Like you say, Michelle, at the beginning, there is two distinct options. One is if you're going to replace direct with what you've got for now and you want exactly the same, then of course Wi-Fi 7 will probably bring better performance in terms of because of the new antenna array, faster AP performance anyway. So you'll have more capacity on an AP, even just replacing the AP with a Wi-Fi 7 access point. Will you leverage from Wi-Fi 7 technology? Probably not until you start to switch on some of those Wi-Fi 7 feature sets, etc. And there are things to consider when you do that. So the other option is, do you take that up as an opportunity to look at what you're going to do next? So one is direct replacement. Yes, absolutely. And actually you will improve. There will be no doubt you'll improve. You also need to consider about the backhaul as well, because when you put Wi-Fi 7 access points in, I think every single access point has got multi-gig, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're breaking that 1 gig barrier all the time.
Yeah.
So you do need to consider about the switching capacity, etc. When you go to a higher end access point, you probably need to consider the PoE budget will change as well. So that's something you also need to look at. When you start to look at the technology side of things, by the way, you can still use 1 gig. It will still work. It's just you will limit it. The bottleneck will be in the network, right? When you look at the technology, though, when you move to the Wi-Fi 7 side of it, there's WPA3 to consider, right? You need to consider that Wi-Fi 7 must use Wi-Fi.
It's mandatory.
WPA3, So, and 6 gigahertz, another thing that we actually didn't mention, but we've mentioned in previous podcasts, is outdoor. You can't use it outdoor in Europe. This is another thing that you might want to consider. So if you are going outdoor, you can't use the 6 gigahertz for that.
Yeah, but let's But you can still utilize Wi-Fi 7 outdoors.
Yes.
Okay. But on the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz only.
Yeah, and that's one of the benefits is that Wi-Fi 7 has been applied to all of the bands, right? So,
yeah, absolutely.
Whereas, in the past, you were on one band or the other, and some vendors even, they were using Wi-Fi 6, 5 gigahertz, and Wi-Fi 5, 2.4. So because they were cheaper, it's cheaper chipset, right? So they were, to create the performance, they were doing a mix of technologies as well.
Yeah, but with Zyxel, we have the band flex technology. So we can take the 2.4 and on the second radio, we can choose between 5 and 6. So maybe now your devices are not ready for 5 yet. Maybe you have not changed them to the latest technology, so you can stick with the 5. But gradually, when you do the upgrade of your laptops or your devices that will provide you the 6 gigahertz support, then you can just switch over the 5 to the 6 gigahertz band, and then you can immediately leverage from a much better band and with much more speed and reliability.
Yeah, so like we said, if you really want to dig into the Wi-Fi 7 technology side of things, we have some other podcasts that really, I would say, deeper information about Wi-Fi 7, and we mentioned the bandflex stuff and talk about that in more detail. In all, when we go back to the beginning question of our podcast, right, because that's how we started, is should we be saying goodbye to Wi-Fi 5? Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I know the answer is, or I know there is a reasoning or a justification. Hey, it just connects. But really, technology has moved on in those 14 years.
Yeah, you're basically limiting a product, right? I would say you probably have technology connected that's way, way newer than the access point itself. And actually, you will never leverage from that newer technology in that product, like your laptop or whatever, right? Will never take advantage of its real potential. So you are limiting it in that factor. Should we be saying goodbye to Wi-Fi 6, though? That is another question.
Yeah, I think it depends, yeah. If you have budget now to do the replacement, I would never replace to an old technology. So then I will always go to the latest one and make sure that I can leverage from that technology as long as possible. But yeah, you can always wait, but there will always be a new technology. So I don't think you should wait.
Wi-Fi 6 is still going to be about, right? It's not just going to disappear overnight.
No, and again, there is that argument. Wi-Fi 6 is still working, is still great, gives you great speeds, gives you great reliability. But again, if you are considering your upgrades today, then Wi-Fi 7. If you've got an existing Wi-Fi 6 environment, and it's functioning as you like and does the job that you want it to be, then there's no
push to do it.
There's no push,
not right now, yeah.
Because we're still waiting for those clients to come along, the more devices to sit onto the 6 gigahertz, the Wi-Fi 7 devices, all the phones to start supporting it, for instance. And once we see that tip in that balance, and we see that the device is supporting the 6 gigahertz, the device is having that requirement for speed, and as the numbers, as we talked about, are increasing, that will be your tipping point.
Yeah, I fully agree with you to see it from that view, yeah, and go for the Wi-Fi 7 product in that case.
So that's quite a bit of information. We'll probably wrap up there, right? I think to answer the question outright, Wi-Fi 5 should go. Wi-Fi 6 is still here for a while, but if you're considering an upgrade today, then Wi-Fi 7 is by far the better approach to move to. There are more pros than there are cons in that approach. So thank you very much for listening.
So thank you, Hugh, for joining again, and hopefully see you soon again.
Yeah, thank you very much.